Hi, this is Kaolin from The Essence of Transformation, and this is going to be episode 7. And it is going to be the second chapter of Talking About Race, a workbook about white people fostering racial equality in their lives. This, I'm going to, at some point later on in the series, because this will end up being about 5 or 6 more episodes. But what I'm going to be doing is discussing more about the creation of the book, how we arrived at the title, some of the changes one goes through with a publisher, and also the incredible joys of being an author. I would like to encourage people who are considering it and have some reservations to keep moving through your work and accomplish what you hope to accomplish with it. So, as I go on, I will start with chapter 2. And also, you can reach me through my business number, which is 413-282-8538, if you have any questions or comments. So I hope that you enjoy this piece of work, and I'm sure that you're very committed to working on racism yourself. Resisting racism. This is a quote from one of the students. I fell back in my big, white, fluffy bedspread and stared at the ceiling. Is this my family? Who am I? Am I a part of them? How can I be? How can I live with them? Look at them? How can I stand myself? Celebrities and all they represent can touch a part of us that unveils our truest feelings about race, feelings and opinions that might otherwise remain masked. One of my students, Clare, discovered that when she heard her father and her brother talking about a well known African American singer, her father's true view, once revealed, disrupted her ideas about her family and herself. She had to move away for a while, caught in the quagmire of conflict discussed in the previous chapter. During our class, though she surfaced, and she had to review what exactly the impact of that opinion had meant to her. She had to dissect the incident as part of her own race story. It was a story, she realized, with larger patterns of discontent and agitation, and she had to learn from it. From the very first day of the semester, Claire was forthcoming about her concerns. She lived in a mostly white town with a small but growing black population. Along with the growth in the number of people of color came an increase in racial incidents from the white population. After several such incidents near her home, Claire came to believe that many of the white people, excuse me, many of the white people in town were racists. Having several friends of color, she was determined not to let peer pressure affect her, but her friends of color had gone away to college just as she had, and the pressure was on. Claire lived in a single parent household, her mother having died a few years before. Her parents had raised her and her older brother to believe that all people are equal. That made the conversation described below all the more upsetting to her. When it happened, she was sitting in the living room after dinner watching TV with her father and brother. Her father was suffering, he was surfing through the channels when her brothers cried out for him to stop and go back. A popular black female singer was on. We'll refer to the singer as Paige Clark. Claire remembers the conversation. Paige Clark, she's a goddess, said her brother. What's that? My father asked. Paige Clark, she's a singer. Who is that? The father said. Who? Paige Clark, she's a singer and a goddess. She really is attractive for a black woman. Ted would you marry a black woman if she was beautiful? Asked her father. I'd marry a black woman if I loved her, whatever she looked like. I felt so proud to hear my brother say this, said Claire. I always saw him as a big, dumb jack, even even though he's 7 years older than me and in college. I like to think I'm the sensitive, intelligent child. You wouldn't really marry a black woman, would you? Well, it doesn't seem very likely, but I can't say I wouldn't. Are you trying to piss me off? My father said. He was very furious. His tone had changed. I slowly looked over at him, and he was sitting up straight and visibly angry. I pissed you off? Nah, I'm not trying to do anything. We're just talking. Well, I just want you to know where I stand. You married a nigger, and you're no son of mine. Do you understand? You won't be welcome in my home. I stared at my father. Dad, are you joking? I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to your brother. Mark, did you hear what I said? Yeah, whatever, Dad. Forget it. Then my brother turned toward the TV and stared, watching the baseball game. My father settled down and watched the game too. I sat stood I stood stunned, looking at my father and brother in disbelief. What's going on? Is Dad drunk? Dad has black friends at work. They have been over to our house in the summer. Why did he say that? My parents always taught me that all people are equal. Was it a lie? I don't understand. He's watching TV like nothing happened. I had to get out of the room. I got up to go, a little afraid my father would ask me why I was leaving. What would I say to him? I locked my bedroom door and turned on the stereo. I fell back on the big white, fluffy bedspread and stared at the ceiling. Is this my family? Who am I? Am I a part of them? How can I be? How can I live with them? Look at them. How can I stand myself? Claire struggled to come to grips with the attitude of this man she loved and needed was sad, but not very surprising. Lots of us have gone through this at home. In my analysis, which I shared with Claire, can be seen a common pattern that is worth analyzing in detail. Here is a 13-step analysis of Claire's story. Number 1, I stared. In parentheses, the ever-popular gaze at the offender. Number 2, you must be joking. Paragraph. Comma. No one means what he or she says when they are being a racist. He must be kidding. Number 3, yeah, whatever, Dad, forget it. And in parentheses, your brother is discouraged if not altogether defeated. Number 4, stunned, in parentheses, the eternal freeze when undeniably confronted by racism within the family. Number 5, disbelief, in parentheses, denial, often suppressed or inverted anger, as you get a glimpse at the road ahead of you. Number 6, question, what? How? In parentheses, then the obvious contradictions in statements and beliefs about your family from past statements that had confused you more than ever about your family and your place within your family. Number 7, did he lie? Parentheses, a lack of trust in Dad now. 8, is he drunk? He must be anesthetized or inebriated if he is a racist. Number 9, gotta go. In parentheses, you must detach yourself and separate from racism and from him. Number 10, fear. Parentheses, fear of departure, becoming disengaged, letting go of both trust and faith in Dad and in Mom, regardless of the past history in both relationships. Number 11, nothing to say? Parentheses, not necessarily, but we do remain quiet as there is a lot at stake and much to think over. Number 12, I would rather lock myself up in a room than fight him. Parentheses, disassociate, turn on the stereo, and drown out this eventful knowledge of self and Dad and the resentment you may feel toward his power, his dominance, and his control over your life. Number 13, how can I stand myself? Parentheses. That's a great question. I a reassessment of identity of self flows out of you. So there are questions, questions, questions. Claire seemed to have sensed that she was not alone in her ideas about racial equality, but her brother's seeming surrender and her father's silencing of her made her feel that she was indeed very alone. What would that have done to her? What should she have done? Now, here are a few additional questions in the workbook writing 2-A in Resisting Racism. If you had been Claire, if you had been Claire, number 1, would you have gone into your room? Number 2, would you have put on the stereo? Number 3, would you have remained in the living room with your father and brother? Number 4, would you have argued with your father about racism? If not, why not? Number 5, would you have questioned him about his poker buddies who were of color? Would you have asked your brother, number 6, to leave the TV off? What else would you have done? I will repeat that again. Number 6, would you have asked your brother to leave the TV off? What else would you have done? Number 7, have you ever experienced any of the 13 steps above? If so, which ones? Number 8, is there a step missing? If so, what is it? A consequence of silence is low self-esteem. How can I stand myself? Claire asks at the end of her story, which was not the end of her story, of course. Many of my white students realized that they had been stuck in the quagmire of conflict over race for years, and they were troubled by what they had done and not done. In some cases, the sheer intensity of their conflict cast a shadow across their later lives. You will meet Marie in Chapter 5. Marie disclosed her father's racism because she decided to attend the high school prom with her African American friend. When her father forbid her to go, he became genuinely confused about what the value of a friendship would be for her with a person of color. And she also became confused when pitted against the values of her father. Her confusion lasted years and impacted the quality of her future relationships and friendships, as well as her self-esteem. Another student, Nell, remembered a conversation with her mother in which her mother clearly expressed racist opinions. Her mother used the word nigger and referred to Nell's acquaintance as them, to her acquaintances. Nell was upset because her sisters accepted it. She was not sure what to do or how to do it. She even was more disturbed by this because her mother worked for a social service agency. So it really challenged Nell. And there was that question of how to perceive her mother. With her mother, with her mother's words, and yet her profession, was her mother good or bad? Was her mother guilty, innocent, or naive? Answers to questions like these must be sorted out in our relationships and our family members if we are to feel good about ourselves. Claire, Marie, and Nell, like many of us, were confused when they recognized racism in their families and afraid to resist it. Such fear may lead to a loss of our humanity. We find it easy to give up our dream of racial equality because we developed it much later than our loyalty and our family and our loyalty to our family. in our family, we find a reliable comfort zone. The comfort zone welcomes you as long as you put your own restlessness about racism aside or suppress it until, out of utter neglect, it withers away. If you can ignore racism, other racists imply, then your ability to deny yourself will be rewarded with comfort. Why leave the comfort zone? What's remarkable, given the fact that we are trained to believe that people of color have nothing in common with us, is that many of us do try to leave, and we do succeed. Race work requires introspection and action. No one could argue that Claire had a lot to think over, and the consequences of disagreeing would be severe. Her silence, in some ways, made sense. And yet, sometimes when we engage in an introspection that is dependent upon silence and betrayal, we are doomed as a result. When we take a look at Claire's father, we see the ideology of oppression, repression, control, and violence. He gives his children fractured relationships as a result, and they take these fractured relationships, whose origin is racism, with them wherever they go. There is no way Claire's family is not hurting. It is certainly hurting Claire and her brother. It seems to me that situations like these are calling out to us for a massive union and healing. How much longer can we go on denying that we have been controlled and controlling, conflicted and conflicting? We are almost, if not entirely, as afflicted by the same perversion of power as people of color. When will we give it all up? Many white people want to be part of a truth, not a lie. We want to be able to speak. And here is a few more questions for you as you read this book at the end of this chapter. Here are 5 questions I would like you to answer before you move on to the next chapter. Number 1, is a loud disagreement violence? Number 2, is being told you will be disowned by your family if you do not remain complicit in your family's racism violence? Number 3, is being picked up and arrested in an interracial setting an act of violence? Number 4, can extreme passivity be considered violence? Number 5, does racial violence wear many masks? I am convinced that many of you will be able to answer those questions. I'm going to move on to chapter 3, which is titled Defenses and Insecurities. The more involved I get in this work, said one of my students, the more I can see why white people don't get involved in it. There are many risks, but most of them are psychological. At least that is true for me right now. There was a student in class who told this story. I was in a daycare center one day when a little white girl, aged 4 or 5, grew impatient with the black boy who she was playing with, and she called him a nigger. The teachers in the room stood waiting for the mother to take action because she happened to be present at the time. The little boy, who was named Nathaniel, stared sadly at the little girl. The girl's mother appeared a bit flustered, but she did not apologize to Nathaniel or scold her daughter. Instead, she went to her and put her hands protectively on her shoulders and said, "Oh, she doesn't really mean anything. She even dances. like like it's interesting that I'm getting a little caught up in this sentence because it's so sad. And I think part of working on racism is going through these moments where, at least for me, and certainly for my students and other people who work on racism, there are moments that are just continue to be completely unbelievable. Anyway, this was one of them. Oh, she doesn't mean anything. She even dances like a little nigger sometimes. And that was that. Now a pause. A pause for grief. I think there's a lot to grieve over about racism. Perhaps you do too. But these kinds of exchanges happen often in our schools at every level, in every state. It happens at work and on the street. Many of us have been a part of these moments when we were not quite sure what to do, when we were trying to bring others into our racism as if it is really a joke or some sort of a slip, as if it is all okay, as if we mean no harm. But the harm has been done. The joke was not funny. We are not a part of it and do not want to be a part of it. Yet we do not know what to do about the joker or the person who was the brunt of the joke. We are paralyzed by defenses. We have too much repairing to do, too much of our own stuff to attend to be of any use. But we keep having these options, don't we? One has to wonder what Nathaniel has. How often have truly innocent children of all ages, been surrounded by white people like the mother in that daycare center? Children of color know about racism without knowing what to attribute to it long before white people do. When they are not protected from the hostility of racists, they are even more vulnerable. When teens of color are taken by surprise by a cop or a teacher who is racist, they may not know what to do. They often internalize this hostility and take it as a reflection of some sort of inadequacy in their part, and they discover that they are in danger simply by being themselves. How are they supposed to come to terms with that? This question sobers us. We start to recognize and dismantle our own defenses. Defenses postpone our commitment to racial equality. The lesson that nothing can be done about this problem of racism left white people with a brand new problem regarding how to live with it. We solve these problems by developing elaborate denial strategies, which we rely upon to postpone our commitment to racial equality and to disassociate ourselves from the pain of racism. In Chapter 2, we saw Clare using some of these defenses. Defenses are masks that we wear to hide from ourselves and each other the pain and fear about racism. We live under an unspoken contract with other white people that we will never pull their masks off. Some of these masks are disassociation, ignorance, false innocence, feel good guilt, freezing, and anger. Freezing. Racism, fear, and violence are intertwined. People experience a freeze when they have difficulty coping with their confusion and fears about racism. Freezing is a common occurrence in race work, and many experience it very young. Remember Tony, when asked about his first memory related to race, he recalled Jan, the new girl, who was the only child of color in his sixth grade class. It looked like they might become friends. Then the other kids began to shun and comment and torment her. Suddenly, Tony remembered, I forgot to speak. I forgot to speak up. Tony attributed his silence to fear of becoming a victim himself and to his knowledge that I could not bring this problem home. But on another level, he may simply have been struck by the freeze. When we reviewed America's long history of lynching as part of the course, a road led us to reading the shocking stories of gross injustice in the criminal justice system, the opposition to civil rights. My students were initially afraid to care, afraid to feel, afraid to cry. Instead, they froze. Freezing in grief. To get around the freeze reaction in class, we tried to open up to what was beneath the fear that causes freezing. Fear often makes grief. It often fears grief. It often masks grief. Since fear is an emotion that grips you, it is also a coping mechanism. It was important that students know they could feel the loss of the lives they were learning about. So much loss is connected to racism. We won't be getting back the lives lost because of racism. We will not be repairing the lives of the people of color racism has impacted so deeply through the centuries. Many white people have been raised in a culture that considers the lives of black women and men as having very little value. So it took a while for the white students to experience sadness for the loss of the lives of those who died in such horrible ways under such tragic circumstances, circumstances that ironically were constructed to ensure and improve quality of life for white people. Coping with grief is one of the most challenging aspects of this work. We have a right to have our sadness exposed to others about this. We have a right to strengthen our equality muscle and learn how to confront others when necessary about our beliefs. Many white people have been substituted, they have been substituting a learned helplessness and freezing for grief. But when we grieve, we care. And when we care, we commit. And when we commit, we take action. Disassociation. Recently, an acquaintance of mine noticed that her neighbors who owned a small farm had black employees working for them. They worked 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, and never, as far as she could see, took a lunch break. Instead of thinking something was wrong with her nice neighbors, as she called them, she focused on what she assumed to be the patience and stamina of the workers. How impressive, she said, that they could work so long and so hard in the heat of the summer. Of course, she did this instead of paying attention to the employers who were her friends, who allowed her workers to work under those circumstances. We discussed this a bit more, and she eventually recognized that the workers had probably not been the ones to set their hours. If her neighbors had employed her or members of her own family and treated them the same way, she would have interpreted things differently. She and her family are European white. Among my students were those who remembered times when they had disassociated as a defense against the pain of others and the reality of racism in their lives. One of them, Mark, recalled a community college he had attended with his sister. There were very few faculty or students of color. 8 of the African American and Puerto Rican students lived in a house called the ABC House, which stood for a better chance. They usually sat at the same lunch table together, and when they did, Mark recalled, other students referred to them as a gang. Mark had spoken with the students enough to learn that they came from unsafe neighborhoods in the Bronx, in Trenton, New Jersey, in Washington, D.C., and Brooklyn, New York, and liked the college because they were safe and they never had to worry about being struck by a bullet when they went out at night. But he took no action. He took no action when they gathered about racism, but that does not mean that they were innocent or simply mean we have not yet figured out what to do. Fortunately, the loss of innocence brings with it a gift, the realization that individual people do have power over the problem. We can come up with the solutions and use our power to solve the problem. There is another ingredient here that's important as we process racism: feeling good guilt. Along with the peers, along with the pose of innocence, is a paradoxical need for recognition and reassurance. We want to be told that we are good people when it comes to race and what to do when we need to earn that title of good people. Well, we may feel guilty. We say we feel guilty. We admit to owning stock in that shadowy corporation, collective guilt. It seems that as white people, we have viewed guilt as a natural consequence of racism instead of as a natural consequence of our apathy about racism. Once guilt is considered a natural consequence of racism, it becomes an odd sort of affirmation, as if the admission alone is a solution to the problem regarding the work that needs to be done. But guilt is not a solution to our problem with racism any more than false innocence was. In fact, when the two coexist in one person, as they often do, they cancel one another out. Guilt makes way for shame. When real knowledge of American history crashed through the facade of innocence and guilt, didn't work any longer as a solution, some of these students in the course felt ashamed. When we feel shame, we usually feel sad, get quiet. There is no denial. There is no one to blame. Shame can be a healthy agent in race work because we need to feel our way through it. It is not enough to think our way through it. We need to do both. This is what made the course unique. Unique, complicated, and transformative. My students shared accounts of shame with me, and I share them with you because they are part of the ragged terrain we must cross on our way to racial equality. The times we're undergoing are extremely challenging in far too many ways to begin to even address in this one program. But there will be more programs, and much of what's going on in the times will get expressed, and there will be guests. So be sure to tune in again. I very much appreciate that you are paying attention. I'm also interested in your own stories, in your own experiences. So at some point later on, we'll do a program in which we can have you on the air to discuss your experiences and some of the ways in which you coped with racism in your life and have probably transformed yourself. Because that's what the essence of transformation is all about. That is what the essence of transformation is all about. So I want to thank you very much. Take very good care of yourself. And I'll be back next week.